Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
Welcome to NHL Wraparound Hall of Fame edition. Vic Morren, along with my good friend Neil Smith. And this is now the fifth in our series of Hall of Famers. First starting with Scotty Bowman, continuing with Pierre Turgeon, Steve Yzerman, and Scott Stevens. And our guest for today has a long history in the NHL. Professional hockey has had a long lineage of families who have had a prominent impact on the game, from the Staals and the Sutters to the Hulls and the Bentleys and beyond. Neil, our guest has a lineage which really makes them the true first family of hockey.
Absolutely does. And I've always thought that, and I've always admired our guest and his family tree. And this is Craig Patrick, the Hockey Hall of Fame. Craig Patrick, the miracle on the miracle team with Team USA in 1980, 2 Stanley Cups as GM of Pittsburgh, New York Rangers general manager for 6 years. And Craig, thanks for coming and being on the show with us.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, Vic, one thing that you don't know about how Craig and I met, besides the obvious, is that I played hockey for Glenn Patrick, who is Craig's brother, in the minor leagues. My last season I played, my last half season in Hampton, and he was coaching the Hampton Aces, and I was one of his. I'm not sure if I was an ace or an ass, but I was one or the other. So when I saw Craig Patrick one day at Nassau Coliseum, I was able to run up to him and say, "Hey, Craig, my name's Neil Smith. I played for your brother Glenn in Hampton." So that's the way that we got to know each other way back then, Craig.
That's quite a while ago, yes, indeed. It's been a great relationship forever.
It sure has, and one that I'm very proud of, and very proud to call Craig a friend, and lucky that I was able to know one of the Patrick families as well as I know Craig. Craig, your family started with Frank and Lester, or didn't start with them, but certainly in hockey. Some of the rules that Frank and Lester brought into hockey, some of the changes are still there today, and nobody even knows how they got there.
Right. They started a league. Their father had a lumber business, and they talked them into starting a league out in the Pacific Coast, and had teams in the U.S., had teams in Canada, and they ran the league. And they just the dad and the 2 boys, Lester and Frank, put all these rules in that because back then hockey had 6 skaters and a goalie. And Lester, when he played, he was the rover. He was a really good hockey player. But when they couldn't pass the puck forward, you had to skate it forward and pass it back. So they put in lines so you could pass the puck forward without going offside. They put in the blue lines. They allowed goaltenders to leave their feet to make saves. Just simple little things that we take for granted today, but they're necessary to get the game going back then.
And what about the numbers on jerseys? Wasn't that Frank or Lester?
No, it was the dad, because he liked to go to the racetracks, and he said, "Why don't we put jersey numbers on them like the horses have?" And so they did. It's funny how things came about, but it's way back in 1900. So
I think one of the things that really give true scope to where hockey was, where it has come from, is that your grand uncle Frank was co-founder and coach of the Vancouver Millionaires. In 1915, 110 years ago, And that was the first team on the Pacific Coast to ever win a Stanley Cup. And then your grandfather, Lester, was the manager and coach of the 1925 Victoria Cougars. And that was the last Pacific Coast team to win a Stanley Cup until the Ducks won in 2007, a span of 82 years. So when you look at numbers like that, it is truly remarkable that your family has been this influential in hockey for so long.
Yeah, they've been around for a long time. It's amazing. But actually, Lester also was part of the first team, U.S. team to win Stanley Cup in Seattle. Seattle, I forget what the name was. But anyway.
The Metropolitans?
Metropolitans, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And actually, they could have won two, couldn't they? Had it not been for the flu epidemic that happened. Montreal was already there, and that the flu epidemic happened. And actually, Montreal, one of their defensemen died in Seattle of the influenza.
Right. Yeah, it was a sad time for that era, for sure.
And it was Joe Hall, the defenseman that passed away. And I believe it actually took place before the final game. Yeah. And that's when the series was actually canceled. So it's quite something that, again, 100 years apart between the influenza pandemic in the 1900s and COVID-19. So a little bit more history there.
Yeah, definitely. Crazy world.
Craig, let's get on to your life and as a youngster, and tell us about your childhood, like where you were born and growing up. You obviously are. Well, I know your dad was Lynn Patrick, the famous Lynn Patrick, who played for the Rangers, one of Lester's sons. His brother, Muzz Patrick, also played for the Rangers, who was your uncle. But where were you born, and what was it like to grow up with this hockey all around you?
Yeah, I was born in Detroit, Michigan. My dad and my uncle Muzz enlisted. They were Canadians, but they enlisted in the U.S. military during World War II, and they spent 3 or 4 years in the Army. And my dad was stationed in Detroit, met my mother, and got married. And I was born in Detroit. And back then, when you served, you got out of the service, you got your old job back. And they were playing for the Rangers when they joined the Army. And they both got their jobs back with the Rangers. So when I was 4 months old, we moved from Detroit to New York. And my dad played his last year there, then got into coaching. And then by the time I was 4, I lived in 4 states. So Michigan, Massachusetts, because we went to Boston at the end, New York, and Connecticut. My dad went from playing for the Rangers to coach the Ramblers in New Haven. Glenn was born in New York, our last year in New York. My sister was born in Connecticut. And so now you know where I was at the age of 4 in Boston. And I grew up, I started playing hockey in Boston, and I really enjoyed it. When I got to be 13, I watched the U.S. team win the gold medal in 1960 in Squaw Valley, and I decided, that's it, I'm going to be a hockey player. And so I was 13. They won it in February or so, whatever date it was. But I turned 14 in May, and before my 14th birthday, the Canadians played the Bruins at Boston Garden on a Saturday afternoon, and my Pee Wee team played between periods. And Frank Selke Jr. saw me skating and playing, and he said to my dad, if your kid ever wants to be a hockey player, we'll bring him to Montreal. So now I turned 14 in May. In August, I was in Montreal at the age of 14, and they wanted me to play for a particular coach, Brother Paul, who was teaching at a Catholic school. So enrolled me in the Catholic school. I played for Brother Paul. We won 2 city championships. But that August, when I went to Montreal, the Canadians gave me a whole bag of equipment, everything I needed, and said, come and skate at the Forum anytime you want. So after school every day, I'd get on the bus and ride up to the Forum and skate. The very first time I skated there, I'm by myself. And I go to shoot on the net, and I look up at the net, and behind the net, I got to back up a little bit because my grandfather and Frank died a week apart in June of that summer. So now it's August, and I'm skating in the Forum, and I go to shoot the puck at the net, and I look up, and there's Lester sitting, two rows up, 2 seats over, right behind the net. And I went, what? And so I thought I was seeing things. So I was seeing things. I saw my grandfather sitting there. But I went around the rink 3 or 4 different times to see if maybe it was a reflection in the glass. And I never saw him again. But he was there that one time when I was 14. So
wow. And at the time when you're 14 and you went to, what was your dad? Was Lynn, what was he doing at that particular time?
He was a general manager of the Bruins. And my mother wasn't very happy about this whole thing. So I think they tried to make it hard on me. So Frank Selke Jr. and my dad take me to this boarding house. And it's a French-speaking family. They didn't speak any English. I didn't speak any French. So it was a little challenging for me. But then they show me in my little room and say, this is we're going to be your room. Then we go back down the street, and Frank Selke Jr. says to my dad, well, and we'll give him $60 for bus fare a week. And my dad said, oh, no, 35 will be enough. I'm going, okay, Dad, whose side are you on here?
Oh, wow.
Craig, you eventually, by the end of the 60s, you're going to college and you're a member of the University of Denver, back-to-back championship teams in 68 and 69. You're the captain. And then you follow in your dad's footsteps and you serve in the Army between 69 and 71 before you actually played in the NHL.
Yes, that was the difference. There was my dad chose to do that. I was in the draft years my number came up and I didn't have a choice. I had to go in for 2 years, or I could have gone to reserves, and I just didn't want to be tied up for 6 years in the reserves. So I did the 2 years and got out. But going back to before we get to Denver, my dad lost his job in Boston. He takes a job in LA. But this is before expansion. He was hoping that a certain guy would get the LA Kings and he'd be hired there. So he went out there. But on our way out there, we stopped at my Uncle Muzz's house. And my Uncle Muzz, when he was 19 years old, I was 19 at the time, but we were moving to California. And when he was 19, he was heavyweight champion, boxing champion of Canada and New York State. Mm. So whenever he spoke, I listened very carefully. And we stop at his house, and he says, Craig, what are you going to do next year? I said, because this is summer. Yeah, so I'm gonna play one more year at junior. Scotty Bowman was our coach in Montreal. And I said, I'm going to play one more year at junior. I'm going to turn pro. And he said, no, you're not. I said, what do you mean? I said, no, you're going to college. So he picked up the phone. He said, I played with a guy named Murray Armstrong, and he's coaching Denver. I'm going to call him right now. And he called him. He said, I got this kid, a pretty good player, wants to come to Denver. That's how I got to Denver. My uncle said, you're going to college. So I'm going to college. So that's how that happened. But then, when I graduated from college, I went in the service for 2 years. But I was very fortunate because USA Hockey had some kind of influence on where hockey players would go when they're in the service. So they got me assigned to West Point as assistant coach. So I went to West Point and played hockey in the U.S. national team for 2 years and coached at West Point. So I'm very, very fortunate.
So when you get out of the service, you start your NHL career, and you played on some pretty lean teams over those 8 seasons. California, St. Louis, Kansas City. Of course, 2 of those 3 don't exist anymore. And the Washington Capitals that had pretty significant struggles in their early years as well. And I remember seeing pictures of you when you played with California with the golden, green, and white skates. And and how did those experiences playing on weaker teams prepare you to start coaching and to start getting into the management end of hockey? Because obviously you end up with the U.S. Olympic team in 1980, a year after your playing career ended.
Yeah. Playing on the teams I played on, I realized that I was a pretty good player, but if the team was going to be good, I'd have to be on the third line at best. Mm-hmm. So I knew how to build a team. If I'm going to be a third line player, then I got to get a bunch of guys that can play better than me when I'm building teams. So that's how I kind of structured my mindset when I'm building teams, because I knew I was a decent player, but I wasn't a top player, and I knew that to build a team you have to have everybody's got to be almost better than me. So that's, but I liked coaching at all levels. I really enjoyed coaching my kids in Denver when I was there as the athletic director later after the Rangers. And I just enjoyed coaching all along.
Before we get into the management part with Neil, I'm going to be remiss if we don't talk about that 1980 team. And even to this day, it's Herb Brooks, it's Jim Craig, it's Kenny Morrow, it's Mike Eruzione. And you don't hear a lot of stories from Craig Patrick, who has to have been kind of the middleman in between Brooks, who had a very abrasive style, and the players. But obviously the end result certainly worked, because that is a team that will live forever in history. But could you share with us some of those experiences dealing with Herb Brooks and working with that club?
I played with him when I was in the Army on the national teams. He was a captain of our U.S. teams when I played when I was in the Army with the U.S. teams. He was our captain. We were good friends. Actually, one story with him is I was playing for the Fighting Saints, and they folded a bunch of times, but when I was there, they folded for the final time. This is right before I went to the Capitals, and I'm in Minnesota. I want to keep playing hockey, so I called Herbie. I said, Herbie, can I come and skate with you guys? I want to stay in shape because I want to get another gig here. I'll tell you exactly what he said. He said, you shit bum pros can't skate with us. But he let me skate with him, and I hooked up with Washington. But I respected that when he hired me, he said, Craig, with the Olympic team, he said, Craig, I'm gonna have to push these guys really, really hard because I want them to be the best conditioned team in the world. And he did, and they were. And I knew from my days of college when we won 2 national championships when I was at the University of Denver, and it wasn't because we were better than anybody. We were in better shape than everybody because we trained 4 hours a day and a mile high. So I knew conditioning was critical. And he pushed them and pushed them and pushed them, and, he had the best conditioned athletes on the planet, any sport that year, for sure. And I agreed with it all.
So, Craig, one thing that I've never known now. So you were with the 80 Olympic team and all that, and of course in the movie Miracle. I didn't think that the actor played. Craig Patrick represented my friend as well as he should have. But anyway, I did think that Herb Brooks's was really well done. I thought that was excellent from what I know about Herb. And I only know Herb because of you and Pittsburgh and when we were together a little bit for a little while there in Pittsburgh. But I got to ask you this one because I don't know the answer to this. I really don't. So Fred Shero is the coach and GM of the New York Rangers. The Rangers have done what they always do. They stole the biggest fish in the pond and got him to leave Philly and come to New York. And then they end up signing the two Swedes and they're switching out of the John Ferguson Winnipeg Jets uniforms back to the real Ranger uniforms at that time. And all of a sudden, Craig Patrick's the assistant GM at the time, if I've got all that right. But I don't know how that happened. Like, how did Craig Patrick end up as the assistant GM to Fred Shero in New York?
Yeah. After the Olympics, I was getting opportunities to meet with teams like Colorado talked to me, the Islanders talked to me, and the Rangers talked to me. And Bill Torrey was with the Islanders, and he offered me an assistant coaching job. The Avalanche offered me an assistant coaching job, and the Rangers offered me. I'm not sure what the title, director of hockey operations, maybe, but I was an assistant GM. Because they had an assistant GM. They hired me to come on board, and I went out to see Bill Torrey because I decided I was going to go with the Rangers. So I go out to see Bill Torrey, and he says, okay, that's your decision, but I'm going to do everything I can to get you fired. But I lasted 6 years in New York, so I'm pretty proud of myself.
Yeah.
Bill couldn't get rid of me for 6 years.
But you were with Freddie though, and then you took over for him. Was it a case where the Garden fired Freddie and then elevated you, or how did that happen?
Yeah. What happened was Freddie we had a rough start. We were 3-14-3, 3 wins, 14 losses, and 3 ties at the 20 game point of the season. And Freddie stepped down. That's what I got. So they came to me and said, "Now, Craig, now what are you going to do?" So I'll get Herb Brooks to coach. But Herbie was coaching in Davos, Switzerland. He couldn't come. So I said, well, then I'll coach. I'll just coach because I want Herb eventually. So I'll wait till he's done with Davos. And so I coached. And we went from 3-14-3 to making the playoffs the last weekend of the season. And back then, one played 16, 2 played 15, So we finished 14th overall. We played the LA Kings and beat them in a short series, best of 5 or best of 3. Best of 5. Then we played St. Louis Blues, who finished 2nd overall, and we beat them in 6 games in a 7-game series. And then the Islanders beat us. But at the end of the year, Sonny Werble and Jack Crumpy were my bosses. They wanted me to keep coaching. And I said, no, I'm going to get Herbie. So they let me, after 2 months, they let me get Herb. So
yeah. And didn't that LA series, if my memory serves me right, that LA series was a fight fest too, wasn't it? Yeah. Wasn't there a lot of penalties?
A lot of fights, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that one. That was a short series, and then of course we're what I would call the modern era, because we're getting into the era now where I can remember everything that went on because I was sort of part of it. And so, anyways, you're 6 years in New York. I remember that well. You had some really good years there, but then you went to the draft in 1986, and you had the 9th overall pick. And we all knew about this kid in high school in the Boston area,
Connecticut.
In Connecticut. Sorry, yes, and of course, the Rangers with the 9th pick overall picked Brian Leetch, and it seems to me that Brian Leetch's number is retired. He won the Norris Trophy, he won the most valuable player in the playoffs, and he's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. However, back in 1986. Tell us that story about the draft and Brian Leetch.
Yeah, we had him number 1 on our list, our staff, And we were thrilled that we got him at 9 on the 9th pick. And Brian at the time was probably 5'10", 160 pounds, defenseman. And my immediate boss didn't think that was a good pick. He just thought, what are you drafting a defenseman that small? And we were thrilled. Like, we were absolutely thrilled. And 25 days later, I was gone.
And in came Phil Esposito out of the broadcast booth, and what's amazing is to fast forward, you end up going back into the NHL in 1989 with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that was my first year in New York, coming out of Detroit. And I followed Phil Esposito, and you followed Tony Esposito. So we have that in common as well.
Yes, we do.
So in Pittsburgh, you've already got Mario Lemieux, and you're fortunate enough to draft Jaromir Jagr and Marty Straka, and you start to build this club. And we all know that in 94, they refer to him as Big Deal Neil. But you had some pretty impressive moves of your own, building the first of the 2 Stanley Cup winners in Pittsburgh. In the summer of 1990, you acquired Joey Mullen from Calgary for a second-round pick, and Mullen had won the Cup with the Flames. In 1989, in December of 1990, you got Larry Murphy and Peter Taglianetti from Minnesota. And then the big one in March of 1991, getting Ron Francis, Ulf Samuelsson, and Grant Jennings from the Hartford Whalers for John Cullen, Jeff Parker, and Zarly Zalapsky. And the remarkable thing in the gamble that you made at that time, or was perceived, was Cullen was 5th in the NHL in scoring when that deal was made. And that's at a time where there were some pretty lofty numbers being put up offensively. So certainly you pushed all the chips into the middle of the table. And like Neil did in 94, it resulted in the first Cup win for the Penguins in the spring of 91.
Yeah, we're very fortunate that Johnny Cullen was playing with Mark Recchi and Kevin Stevens. And they were really our best line. Mario was supposed to be the best line, but they were our best line. And John, his numbers were unbelievable, and God bless him, because we needed him in that deal to make the Ronnie Francis thing happen. So, and it was unfortunate for Hartford, because the owner of the Whalers told Eddie Johnson, who was the GM at the time, you got to get rid of. If you don't get rid of Ronnie Francis by next Monday, you're gone.
Something remarkable about that first Cup in 91 is you lost all 4 opening games in each of the series that you played against the Devils, Capitals, Boston, and even the Minnesota North Stars, who you beat in the final. And the clincher was not exactly dramatic. It was an 8-0 win in Game 6, and that still stands today as the largest margin of victory in any finals game. And can you describe watching Mario Lemieux in that final, getting his first Cup, first of 2 Conn Smythe trophies, and how magnificent he was as you had seen him grow into the leader of that team since you had been there?
Yeah, he was amazing. I had a glimpse of him before I went to the Penguins. I was with the U.S. team going overseas, and we stopped at the Garden, and we watched the Penguins play the Rangers in the playoffs. And Mario controlled the whole game, more defensively than offensively. He was like unbelievable. Like he was Mr. Everything in that particular game that I saw, and I went, wow, this guy's amazing. But then I got to know him more personally and watch him more personally. And he was outstanding. Just, especially those early years in the 90s, he was really unbelievable. Then he started having some back problems, but those years he was just an amazing hockey player.
Well, Craig, let's talk about that 1992 Cup now that you guys won, and Rangers were a big part of that playoff with you guys and the things that went on. And unfortunately, Bob Johnson passed away in between the two, or before the second Cup, and Scotty ended up coaching Scotty Bowman in 1992. And you were able to come back on the Rangers and really never look back after that. I mean, you won consecutive games from there on. But I've always thought that when Mrs. Johnson came out between periods and made that speech at that home game in Pittsburgh, which happened to be the one where Ronnie Francis scored on Mike Richter from outside the blue line, I think it was.
It was definitely outside the blue line.
Yeah, I thought that really was a huge help to you guys in that series with the Rangers.
It definitely was, yeah, definitely. And Bob was such a loved coach by our team, and when Bob first came in, they didn't know Bob, and he was so optimistic all the time, so positive about everything, and all the guys would look around like, who is this guy? He can't be real. But then they learned he was real. He just cared that much. He just cared. Really a good guy.
And then you followed up with Scotty Bowman, and Scotty and Bob Johnson weren't the same person, for sure. I mean, they had much different ways of coaching, but you still got success with Scotty Bowman, who might be the antithesis of Bob Johnson.
Yeah. We were fortunate that Scotty was around when Bob passed. But Scotty did a good job.
In that playoff in 1992, Chicago Blackhawks had won 11 straight playoff games and were up 4-1 the second period of game one of the final. And, of course, we know that game was tied in the third period. Phenomenal move by Yager. And then backhander past Eddie Belfour to tie the game, and then Mario wins it in the last 10 seconds. And for all intents and purposes, people forgot about that Chicago mark, because by the end of that series, you had equaled them with 11 consecutive playoff wins, dating back to the series against the last three against the Rangers. Then you swept the Bruins, and then you sweep the Blackhawks. So, that second cup that was won in Chicago against, by the way, a replacement goalie or the backup goalie who finished the game for Chicago. You remember who that was?
No.
It was Dominic Hasek.
Oh, was it?
Actually finished the game, and I think stopped Mario like 3 or 4 times. And even though obviously he didn't win, it was kind of a harbinger of what was to come.
Yeah. He turned out to be an awesome goaltender for sure. Bob Pulfer was the GM of Chicago at the time, and one of our fellow general managers called him in the summer after we beat them. He said, "Congratulations, Pulley." I said, "What? For what?" He said, "Oh, you held them to 4 games."
Craig, the best team you had, though, in Pittsburgh, and maybe the best team that I saw during my time with the Rangers, was that 93 team. You guys totally dominated the league that year. I mean, I think we gave you your first loss that season in Pittsburgh, and it was a lopsided win for the Rangers, but that was because you'd won every game up to that point, I think, and they finally took a night off. But that team was really something. And I guess you go from 2 Stanley Cups thinking, okay, we're going to get our third one. And the disappointment when the Islanders score that goal and you're out. Does that, I mean, how does that feel? Because I haven't had that thing, but you're thinking, I've won 1, I've won 2. We might be like the Islanders and be able to get to 4. And then you've got the best team in the league, but you can't get by the Islanders for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a heartbreaker because I thought '93 was our best team. I definitely did, and I've said that many times over in my career. But that team was pretty special. I know I got to know Lyle Odeline later in life. He was with the Canadians at the time. They ended up winning that year, and he said when the Islanders scored, they were all in their locker room in Montreal and jumping up and down. They said, "We got the cup now. We got the cup," because they knew they couldn't beat us, but they could beat the Islanders. So, and they ended up winning. But that's what he said. They were jumping up and down in the locker room. We got the cup now. We got the cup.
I wanted to ask you, Craig, going back, and this is an important question for me because I haven't asked you, and I just think it's important. Back in 1980, when you go to work for the Rangers and you're interviewed, as you said, for those three teams, your heart's got to be with the Rangers because your family is the Rangers. I mean, there is no family that's more Rangers than the Patrick family. How did it feel when you became the coach and the GM of the New York Rangers, knowing that your grandfather, your father, your uncle, had all been part of the Rangers? Now you were getting your chance to be part of your family's franchise, basically.
Yeah. It was humbling for sure. Like to get that position was, I never ever expected that. Even when I got hired by the Rangers, I didn't expect that to happen. So it was really humbling, and I knew what I had to do. I had to win. And going back to, and I'm jumping around here a little bit, but there's things that I had written down that I really wanted to ask you because I think it's important. You win the 2 cups. You should have won a third one. But then in Pittsburgh, like it wasn't a joyride for you in Pittsburgh. I mean, you went through heaven to hell in that. I remember it well. You ended up with the teams in financial problems a couple of times, and you had to manage through that and do things you didn't particularly want to do, but that you had to do because it was strictly financial stuff. And the contracts that were done there saw money, paid off way into the future. And that's how Mario ends up with the Penguins down the road. But tell us about those days. I mean, you go from, as I said, right being on the cusp of 3 in a row Stanley Cups with fantastic players, and you're paying people and all that. Then suddenly the purse strings are shut on you. Yeah, it was difficult. Financially, it was really difficult. And we had to scrape things together, which we did the best we could. But I don't want to go into why it all happened, but we did run into some financial difficulties.
But you had to manage through those, Craig. I mean, I've never managed through financial difficulties. As you know, I've only been with the Rangers, and they don't usually have financial problems. But you had to find a new way to do things, and that's got to be difficult for a manager who's been able to have Yager and Murphy and Lemieux and on and on and on, and put together these fantastic teams. Now, all of a sudden, and I'm not asking you why it was done and who it was done with, but just from your standpoint of having to deal with that and not get too down about it or not want to jump ship, but battle through it. And you did.
Yeah, there was some challenges, but I made it 17 years. I'm pretty proud of that. So it was, but there were challenges for sure. And it was difficult. It was difficult to watch some of the teams we had to put on the ice. So.
But your impact on the Penguins actually carries through today, because you drafted Marc-Andre Fleury, Sidney Crosby, and Geddy Malkin, and Chris Letang, and all will be in the Hall of Fame at some point. So there's still got to be some gratification there, knowing that from the Lemieux-Yager era that you were influential, it still carries to this day's Penguins.
Yeah, I'm really proud of the job we did. but when you're finishing the bottom of the league every year, you can get some pretty good picks. So. And that's what happened. So.
But you also had to, didn't the one year when you got Crosby, wasn't it between you and Anaheim? Came down to that of who would get, and it wasn't because you finished dead last. It wasn't the lottery. Hadn't the lottery started then?
Yeah, it was the lottery.
Yeah, because of the lockout.
And Craig, I believe you got the luck of the draw over Anaheim, and that's how you were able to pick Sidney Crosby, and then Bobby Ryan actually was the second pick going to Anaheim. Do you remember if you'd lost that lottery? Do you remember who you guys were going to pick if you didn't get Sidney?
I don't remember. I probably blocked it out a long time ago.
Yeah, well, you got the right guy, that's for sure. And I got to say, Vic, I had a thing that I always did. We played the Penguins, I don't know how many times per season in Pittsburgh. I'd think at least 3. And every time I'd go see Craig in his office and sit around and talk and try to learn some things from him and try to figure out some things so that I could figure out how to get the Rangers to win and not fire me and keep me there for a while. And as it turns out, I got to stay 11 years, which was like dog years, right, Craig? When you're in New York, if you can, that's like staying 25 years someplace else, I think.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was fortunate to be there 6 years. I was happy about that. So.
Yeah, I think we're both fortunate to have. I'm very fortunate. You're a Patrick. I'm not. I'm a Smith. They didn't name a division the Smith division.
Craig, before we let you go, you're in a position now that you're probably never going to get fired in because you're the commissioner of 3-ice, which is 3-on-3 hockey. It's played during the summer, and it's like NHL regular season, overtime, all the time. Can you tell us a little bit about that league?
Yeah, it's very entertaining. We have a lot of different rules than the NHL does. Like if the puck goes up into the netting and back into play, it's in play. We don't have a face-off. We play 2 halves per game, and they're short halves. It's like 8 minutes a half, and we have 2 face-offs, 1 to start each half. That's it. Those are the only face-offs we have in the game, and it's all action, just constant action. And we went out and tried to find skilled guys. We're trying to get NHL guys. We've got some, but ex-NHL guys. But most of them are minor league players. But we get the skilled ones, and that can really dangle with a puck and skate, got good speed, make unbelievable plays. And then in today's world, the way they do those Michigans and things, these guys can all do them. So it's like, it's amazing talent, an amazing product, and the fans love it.
And this will be your 4th season coming up.
Yes.
And no shortage of star power behind your benches coaching these guys.
Yeah, we've got some great coaches. Yeah. Start with Ray Bork, Guy Carbonneau, Ken Danico, Grant Fuhrer, Joey Mullen, Larry Murphy, Pierre Turgeon, who you had on. And they're just great guys. And they love John Leclerc. They love being coaches. They love these guys. They love to see these guys having fun on the ice because that's what this is. It's a fun league, and all the players love it. So,
Craig, when a goal is scored, does it how does that work when one team scores a goal?
The goalie pulls it out of the net, waits for the referee to blow the whistle, and he makes a play. Off we go.
Wow. So that's sort of like we do when we're out playing shinny. Which is the most fun game, is like adult hockey and stuff where there is no whistles at all. You just keep playing. And the one team has to back off when they've scored a goal on the one team. They back off. Yeah,
right.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I wish I was a lot younger so I could play.
I do too.
Yeah,
I wish I was. Yeah, I'm envious of these kids. They have a lot of fun.
Well, Craig, thank you for taking your time and doing this with us and talking about the history and talking about the new league that you're involved with the three ice, and also the days in Pittsburgh, your days in New York, and your days with the great man Herb Brooks and the Miracle on Ice and all the different things. You've had such an unbelievable career, but I guess that goes with the name Patrick, because there is now, by the way, Vic, we didn't mention this, but I called Craig and said, congratulations on having the fourth generation of general managers in the NHL, with Chris Patrick running the Washington Capitals.
Right. Now there's 7 Patricks on the Stanley Cup, because Dick and Chris just got on in 2018. So there's 7 Patricks on the Stanley Cup.
Wow. And by the way, that's the last name of Patrick. Not Patrick Waugh. Yeah. So Craig, thanks anyways. And this is great. I love seeing you. You know that. I mean, it's always fun for us to talk together and talk about the old days, but more talk about shared experiences that we've had with the Rangers in the 90s, competing against each other. And I hated Ulf Samuelsson until I got him. And then I loved him. But really and truly, from everybody listening, thanks for doing this, and congratulations on just what a great life you've had and great career you've had, and continues on today.
Well, thank you. It's been a lot of fun, and it's always good to talk to you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Craig. It's not very often that you have a guest who, as you had mentioned earlier in the show, had a division, or at least his surname had a division named after it for many years in the NHL. But just the span of influence of the Patrick name over 100 years. And I don't believe that you could find anybody in the annals of hockey history, or any family in the annals of hockey history, that can equal what the Patrick name has meant to hockey.
Well, Vic, look at this way. You go from 1925, 26. If you just want to say NHL, you go from 1926, when Lester was the original general manager of the original starting up Rangers. And we're now in 2025, and Chris Patrick is the general manager of Washington. And there's many Patricks in between. So yes, I don't know how you're ever going to find somebody with a lineage that's stronger than the Patrick lineage.
I got to tell you that when I was doing the research for this show, and you're looking at all the names and who's a nephew and who's an uncle and who's a son and who's the grandfather, I said, I got to defer to you on this, because it's pretty hard to really tie up all the loose ends. And
you know, when we were talking to Craig, and he was bringing up his time with, playing in Boston, and then going to visit his Uncle Muzz, and Uncle Muzz said, "You're not playing junior, you're going to go to college, and I'm going to call Murray Armstrong." But I mean, hockey was all around Craig. From the time he was born, there was this hockey presence around him. His dad was Lynn Patrick, was general manager of Boston, and then later general manager of St. Louis. And his uncle was Muzz Patrick, who was general manager of the Rangers after playing for the Rangers. And I mean, hockey just swirled around. It must have been like, breathing is to most people, that hockey was part of his life and always has been. And I've always found Craig such an interesting guy. And don't forget, we haven't mentioned it, that there's a prestigious award named after Lester Patrick called the Lester Patrick Award for service to hockey in the United States. It's sort of a paradox, because Lester Patrick actually was a Canadian, but it's thought of as the first American hockey family. And so just great to have Craig on, and just another real good interview.
By the way, the Three Ice Championship Trophy, it's called the Patty.
How fitting.
Yes. Hey, 79 years old and still scouting the opposition for the Penguins when teams come in. So he continues to have his finger and his involvement in the game. And it is just something that, with the Patricks, you just come to expect that you're a lifer.
It's amazing how, I don't want to use the word incestuous like it's a bad term. I just want to say that incestuous, the game of hockey, it tentacles go everywhere. Who would have known that Craig Patrick and Herb Brooks played together at West Point? Like, I didn't know that. All this stuff comes out when you talk to people, and then he ends up making Herb Brooks the coach of the Rangers. So it's fascinating stuff.
The Hall of Fame franchise, we have another notch in our belt. The 5th show is complete, and you'll be able to see this show also on our website. Newly rebranded, NHLWraparound.com. Cleaner look, easier navigation. Check us out, and it won't be long until we have another Hall of Fame show to post. So on behalf of Neil, I'm Vic. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.